Hey everybody, it's Russell Frost from What Drives Us with a special report on my experience with the Prius PHV prototype. Late last month, Toyota was gracious enough to allow me access to one of the prototype Prius PHVs. Now, I've owned two Prius. My first was a 2005 second generation Prius, which I traded in last year for a new third generation 2010. I have more than 16,000 miles on that 2010, so I'm pretty familiar with this PHV. Now, why? Well, basically, this prototype is a 2010 Prius with the plug-in modifications made to it. As the third generation Prius has received enormous press coverage, I'm only going to discuss the aspects of the vehicle unique to this prototype. If you want to read another excellent article on the PHV prototype, I highly recommend visiting PriusChat.com and reading Tony Schaefer's Dr. Rangelove, How I Learned to Stop Pumping and Love the Plug. Tony's piece is detailed with lots of technical information that I'm going to gloss over in this report. Instead of the single nickel metal hydride battery pack that lives under the back seat of my 2010 Prius, this PHV prototype has three lithium-ion cell packs, one under the back seat and two under the back deck area where the spare tire is normally stored. In total, that's 100 extra pounds of batteries, more than the standard 2010 Prius. And keep in mind, lithium-ion cells store about 3 times the energy in the same space and with less weight than nickel metal hydride. Toyota states the car has a 14-mile range in EV mode when fully charged. I found this to be mostly accurate, which is to say conditions vary significantly, and I have little doubt some people may be able to wring more distance out of the batteries, just as some will find out that they can't quite seem to get that. As several of my friends on What Drives Us have already attested driving the Prius PHV, it is possible to get some very impressive MPGs out of the vehicle. My goal wasn't to see if I could beat them. My goal was just to drive it as I would my own Prius and see what happened. There are excellent arguments that a 14-mile EV range is usable. I won't contest them other than to say I was somewhat surprised that, for me, it really was not adequate. Once you get an EV mode, you want more of it. Driving an EV mode on the freeway or through the city streets is fun. I want more. And I think most car buyers will as well. I'm not refuting anyone's argument about the range. I'm only saying that for me, and I think for most owners, once they have a chance to experience 14 EV miles, they're going to want more. The redeeming fact is that the vehicle charges from empty to full in a mere 3 hours from any standard 110 outlet. If your commute is 14 miles or less and you can recharge at work, you're golden. If you can't, I think you're left feeling somewhat unfulfilled when the EV gauge hits 0 miles remaining. I was. Toyota has truly perfected switching between electric and hybrid modes in this vehicle. It was frighteningly difficult to determine what was powering the vehicle without glancing at the display. I also found out that partially because of my driving style, the vehicle switches over to hybrid mode much more easily than I think it should. One needs to have a very light and sensitive foot on the accelerator to keep the vehicle in EV mode. Of course, that presupposes you're trying to stay in EV mode. There's no need per se. As I mentioned before, Toyota has done a delightful job of having the PHV switch between modes, and you don't need to try to do one or the other. The car does everything for you, as it should, and as the Prius always has. In this sense, the prototype PHV is the perfect next step in Prius evolution. Now, I thought my test vehicle was a little bit louder in the interior than my 2010. Part of that might be leather seats in my vehicle versus cloth in the prototype. I thought the suspension felt a little stiffer than in my 2010. That would make some sense given a little extra battery weight. It may have also just been the way the car was set up. Overall, I think the PHV is a marvelous car. However, I think there's some serious questions raised by this vehicle. How will it be priced? Since this is just a prototype, how will the final production version differ from this one? Will the range be different in the final version? These are huge questions, and it's difficult to assess the vehicle in objective terms without knowing the answers. Toyota has resisted the marketing opportunity so many other car companies have fallen victim to. They have not publicly talked about what the final production version will be. They're running these field tests, some 600 vehicles all around the world right now, and they'll develop a car based on that information. So I would say kudos to them for taking what I would consider to be a more straightforward approach than promoting a finished production vehicle and hoping that your prototype testing supports that. In the end, I don't think Toyota will have problems selling this car. It's not unreasonable to conjecture that it will be made in limited numbers, and even though there will certainly be a price disparity between the standard Prius and the PHV, the folks who want a PHV will likely pony up and not complain. I think Toyota is going to make a great PHV for a lot of people, but from what I can see of this prototype, it's not going to be the mainstream vehicle that the third generation Prius is, and I don't think Toyota intends it to be. I think it's going to satisfy a small niche of Prius enthusiasts who might otherwise be spending a significant sum on an aftermarket plug-in solution. Thanks for watching this video. Check out the What Drives Us podcast for weekly news on the advanced tech car movement. I'll see you there.